Venezuela, a nation blessed with the world's largest oil reserves, yet plagued by a crisis that has pushed millions of its people into poverty and exile. At the center of this tragedy stands President Nicolas Maduro, a figure who has clung to power amidst widespread accusations of corruption, human rights abuses, and catastrophic economic mismanagement. But how does his regime survive, even thrive, under the weight of international sanctions and domestic turmoil? The answer lies buried deep within a shadowy world of hidden wealth, clandestine deals, and powerful unseen allies. Today, we're going to peel back the layers of this complex financial web. We'll investigate the secret networks that prop up Maduro's government, moving beyond the headlines to uncover the dark undercurrents that keep his administration afloat. This isn't just a story about politics, it's a story about a vast, hidden empire built on a foundation of oil, gold, and illicit activities. It is a global thriller where the stakes are the future of a nation and the stability of an entire region. When Hugo Chavez, Maduro's charismatic predecessor, came to power, he promised to use Venezuela's oil wealth to lift the poor. For a time, with oil prices soaring, social programs expanded, and Chavez built a powerful base of support. But beneath this socialist rhetoric, a system of patronage and corruption was taking root. State-owned enterprises, especially the oil giant PDVSA, became personal piggy banks for the political elite. When Maduro took over after Chavez's death in 2013, he inherited this deeply flawed system. But as oil prices crashed and the economy spiraled, the regime needed new, more desperate ways to generate cash. This is where the story takes a darker turn. With the formal economy in ruins, the Maduro regime allegedly turned to the country's other vast resources: gold, diamonds, and even narcotics. The Arco Minero del Orinoco, a massive mining area in southern Venezuela, became a focal point. This region, rich in gold and other precious minerals, has been described as a lawless frontier. Reports from journalists and human rights organizations paint a grim picture of illegal mining operations controlled by armed groups known as sindicatos, often with the complicity of military officials. These mines are not just sources of wealth, they are sites of extreme violence and environmental devastation. Gold, mined under brutal conditions, is allegedly smuggled out of the country, bypassing official channels and sanctions. It gets flown to hubs in the Middle East and Africa, where it's melted down, rebranded, and sold on the international market. This blood gold is then converted into hard currency, which flows back to sustain the regime, paying for loyalty from the military and funding the security forces that suppress dissent. It's a vicious cycle where the country's natural heritage is plundered to prop up an authoritarian government. But the network of hidden wealth extends far beyond illegal mining. To understand how Maduro's government evades sanctions, we need to look at its international allies. While many Western nations have isolated Caracas, other global players have stepped in. Countries like Russia and China have provided loans, technology, and political cover, often in exchange for favorable access to Venezuela's oil and other resources. But it's the more shadowy connections that are truly alarming. Enter entities like the so-called Delta Group. While details about this organization are murky, it's alleged to be a clandestine network involved in a range of illicit activities, from arms dealing to sophisticated money laundering schemes. According to intelligence reports and insider accounts, groups like this act as financial fixers for sanctioned states. They help move money through a complex labyrinth of shell companies, offshore bank accounts, and cryptocurrency transactions. For the Maduro regime, these networks are a lifeline. They create a parallel financial system, invisible to traditional banking oversight, allowing them to purchase essential goods, pay off allies, and continue to operate despite immense external pressure. Imagine a ghost fleet of oil tankers, ships turning off their transponders to go dark, hiding their location as they transport Venezuelan crude. They engage in ship-to-ship transfers on the high seas, mixing Venezuelan oil with crude from other countries to disguise its origin. The oil is then sold through a series of intermediaries, with payments routed through offshore accounts in jurisdictions known for their financial secrecy. This is the cat-and-mouse game being played every day in the waters of the Caribbean and beyond. It's a massive logistical and financial operation designed for one purpose: to circumvent U.S. sanctions. The United States has been at the forefront of the campaign to pressure Maduro. Since 2017, Washington has imposed a series of escalating sanctions targeting Venezuela's oil industry, its financial sector, and key individuals within the government. The goal is clear: to cut off the regime is access to the hard currency it needs to survive and to force a transition back to democracy. Sanctions have been placed on PDVSA, the state oil company, effectively locking it out of the U.S. financial system. Assets of top Venezuelan officials held in American banks have been frozen. The U.S. Treasury Department has relentlessly pursued companies and individuals around the world who helped Maduro evade these measures. These sanctions have undoubtedly had a severe impact. Venezuela's oil production has plummeted to levels not seen in decades. The The country is largely cut off from international credit. However, the regime has proven surprisingly resilient. This is because conventional sanctions are designed for a world of conventional finance. Maduro's government, out of necessity, has learned to operate in the shadows. The more the U.S. tightens the screws on the formal economy, the more the regime relies on its illicit networks. This has created a paradox. While sanctions are intended to weaken the government, they may have inadvertently strengthened its ties to criminal enterprises. The regime's survival now depends not on the prosperity of its people, but on its ability to manage a clandestine, criminalized economy. This deepens the crisis, making a peaceful democratic transition even more difficult. The lines between the state and organized crime have become dangerously blurred. So, what is the endgame? For the international community, particularly the United States, confronting Maduro is no longer just about diplomacy or conventional economic pressure. It's about targeting the deep, covert financial architecture that sustains his rule. This means following the money, no matter where it leads. It requires sophisticated intelligence gathering to map out the networks of shell companies, identify the middlemen, and track the flow of illicit gold and oil. It involves international cooperation with banks and governments to close the loopholes that allow this money laundering to occur. Disrupting these hidden wealth channels is a monumental task. These networks are designed to be resilient, adaptable, and secretive. They operate across multiple jurisdictions, exploiting the weakest links in the global financial system. But exposing them is crucial. Every dollar that is intercepted, every illicit shipment that is stopped, is a blow to the regime's ability to maintain its grip on power. It's not just about bringing down a government, it's about creating an opportunity for the Venezuelan people to reclaim their country and its resources. The story of Venezuela's hidden wealth is a chilling lesson in how modern authoritarian regimes can survive in the 21st century. They leverage globalization's dark side, the interconnectedness of illicit finance, to defy international norms and suppress their own people. The struggle for Venezuela's future will be won or lost, not just on the streets of Caracas, but in the obscure world of offshore banking, clandestine shipping, and illegal gold mines. Unraveling this web of corruption is the key to unlocking a better future for a nation in crisis. Even in the darkest corners, cracks are beginning to appear. Defectors from the military and intelligence services have painted a grim picture of the Venezuelan regime. It's not held together by any grand ideology or belief in a cause. It's held together by two things: fear and money. In this system, loyalty is purely transactional. It's a business deal. Commanders aren't promoted for their skill. They're rewarded with control over lucrative smuggling routes, profitable mining zones, or exclusive import licenses. Politicians aren't serving the public. They're granted access to secret foreign bank accounts and overseas assets. But this kind of loyalty is fragile. When the money starts to dry up, that loyalty begins to weaken. And when trust completely evaporates, it's replaced by a suffocating paranoia. Inside President Maduro's inner circle, power struggles are a constant simmering just beneath the surface. Different factions are all vying for a piece of a shrinking pie. You have the military elites, the staunch political loyalists, and the shadowy criminal intermediaries. They're all competing for control over dwindling revenue streams. Each group understands that their very survival depends on staying one step ahead of everyone else, not just international investigators, but also their supposed allies at home. In an environment like this, betrayal isn't a surprise, it's an expectation. It's just a matter of when. This constant infighting creates a system that is fundamentally unstable, always on the verge of turning on itself. While the powerful fight over scraps of wealth, it's the ordinary Venezuelans who pay the ultimate price. The contrast is both staggering and heartbreaking. While gold and oil are secretly siphoned out of the country through hidden channels, hospitals are left without even the most basic supplies like bandages or aspirin. Teachers, the people entrusted with shaping the next generation, earn wages so low they can barely afford a single loaf of bread. Faced with this desperate reality, entire families are forced to flee, often on foot, crossing dangerous borders in search of a better life. This has created one of the largest and most tragic migration crises in modern history. A country rich in natural resources is hemorrhaging wealth, while its people are pushed to the absolute brink of survival, struggling for their next meal. This hidden economy is the key to understanding the entire Venezuelan crisis. It's the missing piece of the puzzle. It explains why elections seem to change nothing. It explains why protests are met with such brutal and overwhelming force. And it explains why international negotiations repeatedly collapse and fail to produce any meaningful results. The regime no longer needs public support or legitimacy to stay in power. Its survival depends on something much darker: secrecy, coercion, and a steady flow of illicit cash. The shadow system operates outside the law and beyond the reach of the people, making traditional democratic processes almost irrelevant. The real power isn't in the presidential palace. It's in the hidden networks that control the flow of money. This brings us to the future, and the most critical question of all: The question isn't whether this system is immoral. It clearly is. The real question is whether it's sustainable. Can a state built on crime and corruption truly last? History gives us a clear answer. Criminalized states are inherently unstable. They might be able to survive sanctions. They might endure years of international condemnation and diplomatic pressure. But eventually, the very same criminal networks that keep them alive begin to consume them from within. The corruption that fuels the system also breeds massive inefficiency. The secrecy required to operate creates deep-seated mistrust among allies, and the constant reliance on violence ultimately leads to fragmentation and chaos. So, how does it all fall apart? At some point, something has to give. The flow of illicit money might slow down. A key intermediary, a crucial link in the chain, could be arrested. A major shipping route used for smuggling might be exposed by investigators. A foreign ally, once a reliable partner, might recalculate the cost of their support and decide it's no longer worth it. When any of these things happen, the entire structure can begin to wobble, because this isn't a government built on strong institutions or the rule of law. It's a house of cards built on covert deals and personal loyalties. And when one card is pulled, the whole thing can collapse with shocking and unexpected speed. For Venezuela, the stakes couldn't be higher. The country is at a crossroads. If these hidden criminal networks are allowed to remain intact, Venezuela risks becoming a permanent narco-state. It could get trapped in a devastating cycle of resource extraction, brutal repression, and national decay with no clear path out. But there is another possibility. If these networks are exposed, systematically, relentlessly, and without compromise, there is a chance, however small, for a different future. This wouldn't be an overnight miracle. It's not as simple as just changing the person in the presidential palace. It would be a slow, difficult process, the gradual dismantling of the shadow system that has hijacked the nation, wealth, and stolen its future. The battle for Venezuela, Sol, is no longer just a political struggle fought at the ballot box or in the streets. It has evolved. It is now a financial war. This is a war being fought in the fine print of shipping manifests, in the complex trails of bank ledgers, and in the pixels of satellite data. It's fought in sealed indictments from international courts and in the quiet work of investigative journalists. In this new kind of war, the single most powerful weapon is not a gun or a tank, it's transparency. Because when the money has nowhere left to hide, when the darkest shadows are flooded with light, even the most entrenched and powerful regimes begin to falter. They lose their ability to operate with impunity. And for the people of Venezuela, that moment, the moment when the hidden empire finally begins to unravel, may be the first real step toward reclaiming their country and their future. It's the hope that keeps them going, the belief that a better tomorrow is still possible.